Hi, Brian Ryder again with another lesson in perspective 3D drawing. This is the 1-point perspective, but this is now part 2, so we're going on to just a little bit more advanced and hopefully taking you up to a stage. So the lessons, I hope, have been clear. Sometimes it's worth going over them again, but perspective is not that difficult. We obviously have a number of different techniques, and it depends on what your program is as to which method you choose, but after a while it'll become second nature to you. So we've done the axonometric, we've done the isometric, both very, very useful. We've covered the measurements for perspective, which is a very thorny subject, and we've covered the 1-point basic. So this is now the 1-point, the further study, and then after that the 2-point basic, creating shapes, 2-point bathroom, and advanced bird's eye perspective, and the final completion. So here we are, is our new exercise. That's what we're aiming for, and it's not difficult to achieve it. As before, you start with your scale plan. Make sure everything's drawn properly in scale. It's then easy to progress. So, first of all, with 1 point, the back wall is always in scale, but only the back wall and only directly on the back wall. So we want the back wall drawn in scale, and obviously our scale plan will tell us what that is, and then we draw the horizon line. Now normally that's located at 1600 millimeters, which is eye line. You can change that to give you a different view, but start with the basics. Start with a simple, normal 1600 millimeter high. We then locate the vanishing point along that horizon line. Now if, for example, there were more units on the left hand side, we then bias the vanishing point to the right so it swings that wall out a bit, or vice versa, depending on where the units are. Once we've chosen our vanishing point, the horizon line isn't really necessary anymore, so we can get rid of that. But we then line up all 4 corners of the back wall with the vanishing point, and then we project those lines out at each of the 4 corners, and we can now see a 3-dimensional room with your floor, your ceiling, and your walls. Okay? And all we then need to do is to square the room off. Now, squaring the room off might mean finding the exact measurement for one of the walls, which is the one that you're most interested in, or simply it might mean the end of the drawing board space. And that's the usual thing. If you're using an A4 drawing board, you just simply square the room out at the end, and then we can decide what the measurements are going to be. Particularly when you get used to judging some of the measurements. Before that, use the perspective ruler, or the ruler that you might have created. Then we locate the worktop line, 900 millimeters, line across the back wall, directly in scale. We just measure 900 up from the floor line, and that's where our worktops start. Using the vanishing point, we then project the left-hand units along the wall. We now have to find the depth of the worktop. Now that is easily found on your scale ruler, your perspective ruler, so you can choose whichever scale on the perspective ruler that's convenient for the plan. It's totally arbitrary. So let's find the depth, draw the line. Now we can project the left hand carcassing, and of course that's simply a line in from the left hand wall along that worktop height of the depth of the units, in this case is the standard 600 millimeters. We then use the vanishing point and project that line forward towards the end of the room. Once we get to the end of the room, in fact, that back line will intersect the left-hand wall and we can then just simply square the thing out. And this will also give us a check on how we've done, because if you project the wall line from the intersect point and project the floor, that will meet your end panel of that carcass square. It should do. Okay, we're now getting to the stage where we've got the outline of the carcassing, both the left hand wall and the right hand wall, just a repeat of the left hand wall, but there are clearly more units on the left hand wall. And we start doing the same thing for the wall units. Now you can see, because of the height we've chosen, that that wall line is just very, very slight below the front of the wall panel. So we're now completing the wall units, and you can see that we can look at the end panel of the wall units. We look at the front of the wall units, we don't see much else. So we don't really see below the wall units, we don't really see above the wall units, okay? Once we've got the carcassing sorted out, we can now start with a bit of architectural detail. So, in particular the window. Let's get rid of the hidden lines so we can see the drawing much more like a finished drawing, much more towards a finished drawing, and it should be coming clear to you. You can see we've actually left one line in which we've actually used as the plinth. So we've actually used an arbitrary height for the plinth because the line was already there, and it's fine, it looks fine, balances up fine. And now we're going to use the dimensions of the units themselves. Now obviously along the back wall we could easily mark off in scale the divisions of those particular units or doors along the worktop at the back, and then use the vanishing point to project that line over the top of the worktops, and once they intersect the front of the worktops, draw a vertical line. Now on the return wall, which we would follow from that, we need to use our perspective ruler, and having decided the divisions, we can easily select the different points. We start off with a 300, and then the next point is 900, and then the next point is 1300, etc. All measurements are cumulative. Then we go on to a bit more detail, put the sink in, put the hob in, put the dishwasher and controls, the oven and controls, and then we start finishing off. Perhaps at this stage we could render, if it's a simple project we may not want to go into any more detail than this, but a nice little bit of colour helps. But if we want to, obviously we can use inset plinths, very simple, just measure it back a small amount. Inset is only about 60 millimeters. Plinth is inset at both ends. It gets slightly tricky when you go into the corners, but it's quite easy to follow as long as you start from the end panels and then work back in. We can also add things like cornice, light pelmet, maybe even little details such as maybe a microwave sitting on the worktop. Sometimes it's necessary just to add a little bit of depth to the presentation and of course a bit more interest. So I hope that's become clear for you. Go over it, practice with it, do exactly the same plan that we've used, and it should become quite easy for you to do. Next we're going to do bathrooms. Not an easy one, nothing easy about bathrooms. Some funny shapes, difficult shapes, and what we've tended to do with bathrooms really is to go for geometric design. So even if the plan doesn't actually call for a geometric design, a geometric design is much easier for us to present, and we can say to the customer, this is your presentation, perhaps using one of the modern geometric designs. So it can be a sales aid as well as a drawing aid. So see you next time. Thanks very much.